Greetings. This is Timothy Halloran. I am a real-life human being existing in the most revolutionary 21st century and the most exciting years of 2019 and 2020. So we're talking about eclipse season 2019, and we're zeroing in on a total lunar eclipse in the sign of Capricorn coming up on July 16th. This video I'm appropriately doing on the lunar eclipse in Capricorn in my own office, in my own home, where I can have everything neat and squared away. Because admittedly, the last solar eclipse in Cancer that I did outside, I had to empty so much bug spray on myself, I got an allergic reaction. So nice to be in the nice, cool, air-conditioned room to talk about the Capricorn lunar eclipse. Now, I have been discussing this Cancer-Capricorn polarity going on this whole last year. This is a very important polarity at this particular time in human history, and indeed these eclipses strike a collective chord. And so I've put hours of free material up on this YouTube channel. The last 3 videos have really gone into detail discussing the nature of this polarity and these eclipses. So if you've not seen those videos, check them out, because I'm not going to repeat that information today. Rather, let's talk about what's going on these weeks and how these eclipses are going to be setting the tone and the stage for really the next year of 2020 to come. And again, these are exciting years of change, reprioritization, restructuring, in order to form a balance of inner connection, outer stability. And there's a lot of transformation of tradition, relationships, as well as how we relate to ourselves. So lo and behold, today, July 9th, the sun is conjoined the moon's north node in Cancer. And we're really getting this Cancer dose since this last eclipse at the beginning of the month. We have Venus in the sign of Cancer now through the end of July, where she's most slowed down and comfy and tuned in and emotional. This is an emotional, sensitive, feeling, processing, incubating, and reflecting period. And so Venus is drawing us to our safe spaces, our close connections, and that sense of familiar support. Mars is in the sign of Leo until mid-August. And so Mars has this energy, this excitement, this sense of freshness and newness, which can be spearheading these new patterns and this reprioritization, which is going on at this time. Mercury has just stationed retrograde in the last few days at 4 degrees of Leo. Mercury has just stationed right next to Mars, right next to asteroid Juno. And now Chiron is stationing retrograde at 5 degrees of Aries. There's a beautiful fire trine between stationed Mercury and stationed Chiron. And this is powerful. I mean, again, this is a potent eclipse season. Not all eclipse seasons are created equally. And again, there is a tremendous inward pull with this Mercury retrograde coinciding with the Cancer solar eclipse. It's like we are having a lifetime review. They say when we die, our whole life flashes before our eyes. It's as if we are replaying those tapes now. And when Mercury retrograde happens, we may be meeting old friends, reflecting on childhood experiences. And you know, this Mercury stationing in Leo really brings the emphasis and the spotlight to childhood, even playing. You know, what games were we playing? What were we doing with our friends? What was that joy, that magic, that divine spark, that innocence? And now that we're reflecting upon this, there is again this introverted draw to return to this inner child. It is such a healing opportunity with Mercury stationed trine to Chiron. I'm encouraging everybody to seek out the counseling, the therapy, our friends, our support. Have the conversations. what's hurting, what's missing. What is that journey to return back to support, to light the inner child? Where can we find those tools? By opening up, by reaching out at this time, there can be a huge amount of recognition, of realization, of disclosure that is allowing for this healing journey to play out through this life review. Indeed, it's as if we're able to tune into the very divine flow of life itself. And a part of the wisdom of this Mercury retrograde is the exploration of, well, what is my personal story? Mercury will retrograde back into Cancer July 19th, station at 23 degrees of Cancer, opposite to Pluto, July 31st, before moving back into Leo August 11th. There's a lot of this going back to the inner child, subjective, inner emotional processing. And some of this wisdom with this trine to Chiron is the recognition that this is what life is. This is what life is supposed to be all about. It is a play in many respects. It is a drama. I think of those, classical Greek drama masks where there's the comedy laughing mask and there's the crying tragedy mask. And of course, the Greeks had the philosophy that this is what life is. Life is a comedy or it is a tragedy, and it's usually a bit of both. And we can really be tuning into that deeper level of holding space and appreciating this dance, this play, to tell its story. And this deeper healing vantage point and position that may very well be resting in our hearts and holding space for this dance. Again, it goes up and down. We have good days, we have bad days. We experience the joy and we experience the tragedy. And there is this extra capacity now to allow that, to embrace that, to allow the depth of beauty and the depth of feeling that comes out of the full spectrum experience of life, to invite our soul into evolution and transformation. Because don't you know, that's what life is all about. This is not a mistake that life has tragedy and comedy and beautiful days and sad days. This is what provokes our soul to evolve. This is what souls crave, that drives us to take birth after birth, is that personal experience of life. The actual feeling of life itself comes from all these different stages and plays and experiences. And so there's this capacity to just really breathe in this full feeling, this richness, this experience, and to allow it to unwind our heart, our deeper truth, our story, this healing journey. This acceptance, this embrace that it's supposed to be this way can invite a creative loosening and an opening through which this inner child can pour forth its inner light, its inner creativity. And again, Mercury, now pausing on top of Mars and Leo and asteroid Juno, is inviting us to explore, how can we celebrate ourself? And I affectionately refer to this part of ourself as our own inner child. Like when we have a birthday, when we have a solar return, that's Leo. It's about celebration, who we are as a unique individual. And what I encourage all of us to do on our solar returns is to celebrate ourselves the way we desire to celebrate. Not every child wants to go to the rollerblade rink or throw a big party, at Chuck E. Cheese's. We all celebrate that joy, that spontaneity, that play, that dance, that creativity in totally unique ways, and allowing our inner child to speak to us and slowing down and tuning in enough to be informed by this life review and this replaying of the old tapes. We should be celebrating what it is that brings us back to that sense of what real life is all about. Retracing our steps to reclaim that spontaneity, that really is what it means to be alive. That spontaneity that children embody is what we are evolving to come back to. Not in the childish, naive way that does not understand the world, but in a way that has confronted and overcome the world in such a way to return to that spontaneity without becoming naive or delusional, but rather not selling our soul to the world, but having the confidence to create this heaven realm for the inner child by being willing to construct that world and roll up our sleeves and do the necessary work out of honor and respect for that inner child and the divine feminine. So here comes our lunar eclipse in Capricorn. Roll up those sleeves. Take a deep breath, because we are partly on the construction crew, but that is not our final destination. This is not our punishment. This is not being on the chain gang. This is, again, the opportunity to form a relationship between that mature, powerful, confident, and strong inner parent that can survive in the world and change it into something better. And that's not by bypassing, ignoring, or suppressing the inner child, ignoring our inner feelings, or ignoring that desire to return to play, but doing the work that pays it forward. So that way we can play, we can relax and unwind in the future without simply copping out or escaping our relationships, our world, or our duties, but by bridging that joy, that spontaneity, and that emotional fulfillment with our roles in the world, our relationships, and our duties. Now, stereotypical Mercury retrograde, absolutely, there can be the technological issues, spontaneous occurrences, communication breakdowns. This Mercury is also stationing square to Uranus in the early degrees of Taurus. So yes, there can be that sense of getting very, very, very fast. And this Mercury inner child dynamic can see where things are going and be excited to play and can get very ahead of itself. And this in and of itself is not a problem. It's like, yes, see the future, taste that sense of freshness and momentum. This is our light at the end of the tunnel. But it's about allowing that process, so that way we're not beating ourselves up or being frustrated or angry that it's not all coming together, or when those stereotypical Mercury retrograde wires get crossed. We understand it's an opportunity to try to come at it in a different way, so to discover and pioneer newer and better ways of doing things. I do hope this recording actually gets recorded. If it doesn't, I'll do it again, and it'll probably be different. Stereotypical Mercury retrograde. Let go, be loose. Don't force any square pegs through a round hole. If we do get frustrated, if we find our mind or our nervous system is getting too heated up, just set it down, maybe sleep on it, and come back to it the next day. I would say part of this Mercury retrograde squaring Uranus is also this magic of this life review. It's like that time clock is busted, and we can be traveling in time and having suppressed memories come back and glimpses of the future come in. And this is to play with. This is to experiment. We want to be the artist giving ourselves the raw materials just to play around. Or the cook having these different ingredients. How are we going to create this perfect recipe? And just give ourselves this whole month of July really just to process, really just to mull it over. There can be the other shoe dropping. There can be missing links and hidden things coming to us through this month. So we want to play around with these materials. We want to experiment with how we can take things in the future, but we don't necessarily have to hit the ground running, as I've never witnessed a newly born child spring forth from the womb and hit the ground in that most learned and perfect pace and way of interacting with the world. So give that permission and that grace to our own inner child. Because again, Mercury moving back into Cancer July 19th, stationing opposite to Pluto at the end of this month. So this is a period of deep contemplation coming to us through this month. And a part of this whole Mercury retrograde is a divine reframing. How have we been seeing our life, these expectations, obligations, how we do our work, how we do our relationships, how we structure our family, what family means to us, what success means to us, what accomplishment means to us is changing. The rules of the game are changing, and as those rules change, the whole purpose and meaning and experience of reality also changes. So give ourselves this time to contemplate and see how can we create these necessary containers, supports and connections to have the space, the time, and the raw materials to continue to play and to be free to explore. So that way we can lay this foundation in the best way that honors us. Lunar eclipse, 24 degrees of Capricorn, coming up July 16th. This is next Tuesday. Okay, this is a powerful lunar eclipse joined with Pluto, Saturn, the moon south node in a new phase and opposite to Venus in Cancer. All right, so Capricorn is our strength, maturity, and capability to overcome real world challenges in order to create real change. That's this Pluto Saturn. I mean, this is the construction crew. What is the task? What is the challenges? What are the materials we're given? What are we handed by our families? What are we handed by our world? And there is some work. And this can be the other shoe dropping. You know, I would love to do this, and this is the financial situation. I would love to be this free, and this is the physical situation. And you know what? This is what we came to address. This is what we came to confront. There are different aspects to life and nature. So let's really get to know what this Saturn and Capricorn figure and archetype is, because there's so much misunderstanding around Pluto and Saturn and these heavier aspects of life and nature. There's a lot of fear and insecurity around these parts. In traditional astrology, these have been the bad guys of life of nature. You know, punishment, karma, you know, these have had a negative reputation. I've even heard people say, oh, you know, be sure to invite in your angels and all these protective barriers if you're dealing with Pluto and Saturn. And this is honestly a lot of superstition and a lot of fear. These are not bad guys. These are a part of the creation, a part of our makeup, and a part of the human experience. This is about embracing the human experience. And there is the tragedy aspect, but it serves our soul, our evolutionary growth. So we've been really getting into these personal aspects of life, the sign of Cancer, the sign of Leo, the planets Venus, Mars, Sun, Moon, Mercury, being in these signs has been this subjective and what's inside of ourselves, our inner world, our personal experience, our immediate environment. And this is where the reprioritization is taking place. This is where we're sowing seeds and caring for our garden and developing new levels of inner space, inner connection, and inner support. And now the lunar eclipse in Capricorn is coming up. And guess what? The 14th, the 15th, the 16th, the 17th, we're looking at Saturn and Capricorn and Pluto, which is the outer circumstance. It is the current paradigm in which we are born, the current timeline, our societal situation, the outer reality. And so this is what Saturn is. Saturn is fundamentally structure. Saturn is limitations, which holds everything together. Limitation, even separation, not a problem. It's what allows for the manifestation of form. Saturn is the gravity holding us to the earth. bonding the molecules together. And Saturn is time, holding the experience of separation and form together. Saturn is the wheel of time, of karma, which means that Saturn is essentially the laws of nature, holding nature together, as well as the laws of action and reaction. So this is what karma means. Action, reaction, chemical reaction, laws of nature. Not necessarily personal, not necessarily inwardly subjective. It is like giant mechanisms, giant magnets, and the pendulum of time swinging back and forth. Golden ages, dark ages, matriarchy, patriarchy. This is all a part of that wheel of time. And so there has been a very long chain of real world events that have brought us here where we currently are. And this is the past. This is, again, our cultural history, our societal history. It is our family's karmic history. These patterns that have taken place and set this wheel in motion. And so this is karmic runoff that we are witnessing and experiencing out there in the world. And the key here is that it's not necessarily a punishment. It's not like we've been sent here as a curse and this karmic runoff is here to punish us. It is simply the deeper understanding that we as human species are not separate from the past. The past has made us. It is alive in the present. And that past is usually, well, if we look in the past, we were more primitive generally. When we look at time as an evolutionary journey, things are improving as we go forward, hopefully. It's not that we have not experienced setbacks throughout time. Part of where our collective human history may in fact be is crawling out of a long outstanding collective historic setback. And this setback has to do with the last 10,000 years of human history that has largely been an evolutionary focus on societal development. So these Saturnarian laws of how to function in the outer world, societal roles, how to survive as a society, how to divide up society. And it has not all been perfect. It has not all been fair and equal and balanced. This is what patriarchy is. Societal expectations that have been ingrained through historical traditions. So this is the past that we're all connected to, that we can't just skip, jump, or run away from, but we have to address. And that's not to be imprisoned or punished by the past, but rather to see this karmic runoff, understand the dynamics, the mechanisms. No, it's not just personal. It's the pendulum. It's the machine. And what are those dynamics? So that way we can change them rather than be imprisoned by them. And so these patterns do continue until we recognize them and until we tie up these loose ends. What has been that familiar karma? What is the pattern of our family? Where may we feel those unconscious walls or barriers that may have been our parents, our grandparents, and their relatives surviving famines and wars? This is our connection to the past. And we are coming out of the Dark Ages and the Victorian era, and there are loose ends to be tied up. We have all been wounded and afflicted and oppressed and hurt in the past. And this is not a punishment to remember these loose ends. It is about healing this past trauma. Now, this is actually a really important dynamic because, well, I'm an evolutionary astrologer, and us evolutionary astrologers are entirely focused on healing the soul so we can evolve and step into our soul's potential. And where a lot of the stereotype for astrology is astrologers predict the future and where we're going to go, evolutionary astrology is really focused on the past. What are these entanglements? What is this karma? What are these old wounds, so we can recognize them and heal? And one of the issues that can come up with this recognition of the past is this expectation that we should just simply accept the past as we created this and this is the mess we created, and so, it's our fault. That can go hand in hand with too much guilt or shame that can re-traumatize us innocent human beings that are imperfect for the purpose of experiencing life and being on this evolutionary journey. It's not like unconditional sin brought us to this fucked up place because it's our burden to try and fix it. That gets in the way of healing. So it's not just about belief. It's about, okay, how can we create a container that allows for the best healing? So yeah, we may need to recognize what some of those past experience dynamics or challenges were, but we do not need to identify them in such a way that, oh, we're responsible, we created them, so it's our fault and we need to fix our past mistakes. No, it is our responsibility to fix these problems because we are human beings that care. We were born to be healers. We chose this earth. We chose the Dark Ages and the Victorian era because our soul came alive and said, those poor people suffering, being imprisoned, being locked away. I mean, just look around. This is not the past. This is the present as well. Here in the United States, we're putting people in concentration camps still. I mean, we have to see that the traces of the past are not gone and disappeared, and we collectively tend to refer to those past human beings, oh, they're so primitive, they didn't have the technology, oh wow, Jim Crow, 50 years ago, those primitive human beings, so racist, so unevolved. Are we really so far beyond? I mean, this is the mess that we came to clean, not because it's our punishment, because we were born to care. Okay, this is what it means to be a bodhisattva. Dalai Lama getting into so much trouble for all these things as well. But the Dalai Lama is asked, where are you going to be born in your next life? He says, wherever there's the most suffering, of course. This is what it means to be aware, to be alive, all controversies aside. No need to bring that up. Plenty of reasons and different experiences for all of these things. And that's the point. Again, look at this tradition. Look at these different cultures. Look at the huge culture gaps. I mean, this is important stuff, and this is what we're addressing at this time. Okay, so this is about redemption, not punishment. We are redeeming the fallen human being, not blaming the human fallen being. Okay, we have to hold this space for others and for ourselves. Let's face it, when we're talking about this Saturn, South Node, Pluto, Capricorn, and this is not like, hey, you're a Capricorn, this is how you are. No, I want to be perfectly clear. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the distortions that have taken place in human history. Okay, and that distortion was very focused on, again, societal evolution, and that's why these distortions formed. And if we think about it, that's not even a problem. We had to form and survive in society to a certain respect, so we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But has there been the formation of laws, regimes, tyrants, oppressors? And now do we live in a world where companies own the world and systemic oppression is the name of the game, and we're all trying to play this ridiculous game and climb the corporate ladder, and it's an impossible game because the number 1% is at the top and makes the rules and gives themselves the advantages, so on and so forth. So yeah, we can say this is evil. This is a huge block that gets in the way of our collective human evolution, and that's what we are addressing right now. This eclipse season is setting the tone for the years to come, and what this tone is we are coming up against the wall of the collective evolutionary cork that's been bottlenecked. And we're coming up against this cork, and there is the old governments, the old companies, those old patriarchs getting popped off. And there's a lot of tension and a lot of resistance, but it's also necessary to see what is that cork. And this is not going to be a soul or a person. They're dynamics. The patriarchy is not a person. The patriarch is not a person. Donald Trump is not an evil overlord. He is a victim of circumstance. He's a victim of trauma. He's a victim of these structures that have been long in place, well before Donald Trump. And again, not getting into politics, not getting into controversial stuff, using examples. Let's give an analogy for how we heal evil. And this is so important at the root of my work, which is a lot of deconditioning, false righteousness, and moralism, where we blame so-called bad guys. Oh, they fucked up, they did something mean, they hurt me, they hurt other people, so screw them and attack them, and going on the war path. And this recreates evil. This is what creates evil. One of my favorite books, Pronoia by Rob Bresney, amazing poet and magician, real historical fact that he cites. In the Dark Ages, a real church degree was passed that said cats are ambassadors of the devil. And as a result of this, thousands of people killed tens of thousands of cats, thinking they were doing the good work, protecting human beings from evil. And as a result, the rat population upsurged, directly contributing to the Black Plague, which killed tens of millions of human beings. This is how evil works. Blame bad guys outside of ourselves. We become the bad guy. So what's the analogy here? Evil is the distorted, rotting fruit hanging off of a tree. And when that distorted, rotten fruit falls from the tree, via the disease of evil, that rotten fruit sees the tree as being the source of its evil and chops the whole tree down. And then the tree has to regrow and regrow and regrow, and this is the phenomenon of trauma. As it just so happens, trauma is the root of all evil, not bad guys. How do we heal the evil in this distorted, rotten fruit? By sending nutrients to the fruit, by sending nurturance to the fruit. Evil is when the fruit becomes perverted enough to believe I must declare war on the tree and chop the tree down to heal evil, which recreates evil. The only way to heal evil is to heal the fruit, to send nutrients to it. For example, we live in a prison world. We send perpetrators to prison to punish them. And we say, you're going to spend so many years in this box where you're cut off from nutrition. You're cut off from resources. You cannot get an education. You cannot learn real world skills. And what does this do? It creates more crime. It creates more evil, and it creates more prisoners. And my guess is this is intentional in this prison society, money-making business in which we, unfortunately, still inhabit in many respects. In The Wizard of Oz, prisoners are sent to a huge library where they are locked with thousands and thousands of books, and they are forced to educate themselves. My goodness, isn't that a beautiful symbol for where we could hopefully evolve in the future to heal from the distortions and perversions that is crime and evil that would not exist if we had healthier systems in place. Time to restructure, time to reprioritize. And this is so we can provide the nurturants and nutrients to ourselves. I'm also going to be reducing the price of my Saturn workshop. Now also 50% off in my store. This workshop is entirely about deconditioning, changing the rules of the game. And so feel free to check out that workshop if you feel the call. And in one way or the next, honor your call that gets that healing where it needs to go. And it does begin with ourselves, because while we're carrying resentments and bitterness, that's what causes us to blame, to chop down the tree, to drop bombs. We have to give that nurturance and nutrients to ourselves, because that inner brewing resentment or anger or frustration will turn into hatred unless we embrace it, address it, and say, you know what, my inner child, your growing resentment and anger and fear is happening for a reason. So let's talk about it. Let's talk to that person in a nice, safe feeling, embracing, non-judgmental, non-punishing, non-mudslinging way. And you be amazed at the amount of healing and transformation that will take place in this month if we can simply be open and embracing of that process. Venus conjoins the moon's north node Wednesday, July 17th, opposes Saturn and squares asteroid Pallas Athena the same day. It's this huge dynamic coinciding with this Capricorn lunar eclipse of accomplishment versus relating. And how do we create a balance when there can be a tendency to sacrifice one for the other? Pragmaticism, real world stuff, versus artistic, creative freedom, the inner vision of the inner child. High expectations, high pressures, what we're supposed to be doing, our duties, can be detrimental. This pressure internal that we should have all of this done at this time, in this way, all figured out, all squared away, can really be an internal punishment. So no, be very, very, very flexible to ourselves this month. And we can't just escape from the duties, the pragmatism, the real work of reprioritization that's taking place. And I'm encouraging people to do this work. Take those nice long baths, my goodness, with that Sun and Venus on the moon's north node. Even if you need a time clock to clock in and out of that bath time, see it as doing really important spiritual work. That is doing the work of reframing, of reprioritizing, to integrate what really matters, to create more healthy, harmonious lifestyles, even when that old broken record of the past, the parents, the authorities saying, oh, you should be doing so much more, your kids need you, your boss needs you, your nation needs you. No. We have to give the nourishment and nutrients to ourselves first, lest we become that crazy, distorted, angry fruit with an axe. So this is about forming new structures, deconditioning, changing the rules of the game to allow for a healthy balance of participation in world and society and work with play, with enjoyment, with intimate relating and creative accomplishment. So this is a huge opportunity. Pallas Athena squaring the moon's nodes while we have these eclipses on the north and now the south node. This is about balancing our internal masculine and feminine. We all have the inner mom, the inner dad, and we're bringing them together to meet in the point of supporting the inner child. We are forming this inner network, this inner family. That's the opportunity of this time. We're deconditioning. We are confronting fears and superstitions. Oh, this astrologer told me I can do this magical practice on these days and not these days, and I did this magical practice on the wrong days, and now everything's going to go wrong. Superstition. Superstition is when we have a fear that doesn't make any sense, and yet something is trying to convince us that it should make sense, even though that we know it doesn't. That's not reality. That's a superstition. It's a ghost story. And we're confronting these inner demons, these inner ghost stories. And we overcome these fears and insecurities by confronting those inner ghost stories. We lift off the veil and we see the silly, actual what it was. It was just, wind going through the tree limbs. It was just a cloth being blown on, by the wind. This is a big part of this deconditioning as well. We think that we have to fight to survive. We have to go into work. Even if I'm sick, I'll put in those hours. This is superstitious belief that imprisons us. And so this is, again, the deconditioning, the restructuring, stripping away cultural distortions. Confronting, addressing, and changing those family patternings of repeated karmic entanglements. This is just the way we are. Yeah, it's messed up, but you know what? You're part of the family, and this is the world as it is. That's the negative, detrimental voice of Saturn. It is what it is. It sucks. Too bad, you're a human being. You must have slipped up in the past. Original sin. You better do your cat and nine tails penance. It's no, no. We are ending these societal programs and expectations. They're not real anymore. These are simply the ghost stories of the past age. And when we see and when we feel these ghost stories, give yourself a pat on the back. Say, good, you see it. That superstition, that fear is there, which means the healing, the unwinding, the confronting, and the dissolving is taking place. The medicine is working. The symptoms are showing. Give yourself some real solid pats on the back. My God, this is the month to recognize yourself for the very huge amount of work that we are all doing inside and outside. We are stripping away gender biases. Male has to be G.I. Joe. Woman has to be Barbie. Male has to go to work, carry everything on his shoulders, can't be emotional, vulnerable. Women can't be recognized in the workplace, all dissolving. So let us dive into the insecurities, the fears, the dependencies. Also, I'm not going to do this work myself. You take care of it. Dependency creates insecurities, creates superstition. Not necessary. We're stepping up to end dependencies caused by these old distortions, distractions, and deceptions coming from tradition, history, and the past, changing them. So to create a balance of our inner masculine and feminine. So to create a balance of our receptivity and our connection to others. So to be able to listen, to hear other people's plights. This is why you were triggered. This is why you overreacted. It's not what I thought it was. There's more to the story, and now we're on a healing journey. Being receptive and connecting in that supportive, loving, empathetic type of way, but by holding an inner strength simultaneously, to be capable and strong enough to do the work, to confront the dynamics, to be the bigger person in many respects. You know what? There's been a lot of hurt, and there's been a lot of mudslinging, and there's been a lot of name calling, but you know what? This ends with me stepping up as my own inner parent to my own inner child, so I can take care of myself, provide the nourishment and nutrients that I need, so that way I'm not wrapped up in resentment turning into projection and instinctual reaction and evil. I'm doing that inner work so that way I can be the bigger person. I can step up as a mature adult and take care of myself. And I'm sorry that you're going through this struggle and that all this is happening. I can provide something for you, but I'm also going to have the healthy boundaries, because I can take care of myself, and I don't need to just get wrapped up into being an eternal mother or father for someone who is refusing to step up themselves. We encourage each other to step up in ourselves, not by punishing, not by wagging the finger, but by giving each other a mutual encouragement. You can do it. You've got this. You are strong enough. It may seem scary. It may seem challenging, but you've got this. You're doing amazing work right now. My God, I am proud of you. You should be so proud of yourself for doing this work, for doing this healing. Be that voice of recognition, of reaffirmation, of support in yourself. This is the inner strength being cultivated, being developed now. You can do and build and construct what you will to in the world, being your own authority by honoring your own standards, your own values, that gift, that spark of your own inner child. So in great balance and divine harmony, go in peace and love, take care. And I'm wishing absolutely all the best to you in this very exciting time of change.